Welcome back, and I'm Jeff Byers. I'm going to take you through part 2, which is laying out UVs. We're going to go ahead and do some cleanup work on the drum. And we've got some parts here where we have the cap, and we have the air vent we need to work on. So we've cut the bottoms off of these. Let's go ahead and finish with cleanup. So we're going to go ahead and select every other edge. And we're going to go ahead and hit the delete key so we can get those all quads. And same thing with this. Select every other one. And delete those. Alright. Okay, as you're modeling, you're just going to learn the tools as I go through. Again, get familiar with moving around in your scene, and we're just doing cleanup. And I'm going to select everything. I'm going to marquee select everything and go into edit and delete by type history. Now the reason why I do that is delete by type history is if I go in here and select one of the objects here, you can see that I've got history in here, and it's quite extensive. I got some history on these guys right here, but we need to delete by type history to clean that up. So we're doing cleanup right now before we start UV mapping. So to clean up, you're going to go to edit and delete by type history. Okay. Make sure everything's selected. So when you click on the oil drum itself, we have a clean history. The top cylinder. Okay. Alright, so we've got the air vent and the cap and the oil drum itself. And what we want to do now is we want to go ahead and start texturing. Now we're going to have to combine these two together, but right now let's keep them separate so they're easier to texture map. Okay, so right now we want to, we're not going to worry about naming anything because we'll do that at the very end. Alright, so let's go on to UV mapping. To get into UV mapping, you're going to want to go into Window, and I'm holding down UV Texture Editor. Okay. And it comes up with this window here, and how you can navigate in here is the same way you navigate in an orthographic viewport. Hold down the Alt key and the left mouse button. You can also zoom in and out by holding down the Alt key and the middle mouse button. And you also can zoom in and out manually, Alt key, holding down the Alt key and the right mouse button. Okay, same thing as the viewports. I'm going to minimize that a little bit and scale this down if I can, if it lets me. There we go. Alright, so right now you can see the UVs are all messed up, they're overlapping, and overlapping is when you see these UVs on top of each other, and in gaming you don't want to see any overlapping. Another thing is we basically have a really bad seam, and we've also got some other stretching and problems, and I'm going to show you how to lay this out properly. So right now I'm going to minimize that, and we're going to go into texture mapping. So I'm going to go into adding a material. So right click over the object and go to assign new material. And I'm going to click on blend. Okay, I'm going to rename this blend as oil drum. Drum underscore TX. And that's all we're going to do right now with that. So we've already renamed this. We've added a blend to it, which is easy to do. And we're going to do that to the caps as well. So I'm going to right click over the cap. Now sometimes Camtasia captures marquee menus, but sometimes it doesn't. So I'm going to take you through it. If you don't see it, just right click over the cap and go to assign existing material and select oil underscore drum underscore TX, the one you just created, and that will add that same material to that cap. The air vent cap, we're going to right click again, go to assign existing material, oil drum TX. There we go. So now we have a texture, or excuse me, material set up for that, all these objects. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is we're just going to select everything on the outside of the drum. There's many ways of doing this. You can go right click over the object and go to face selection mode, and you can hold down the shift key and select one face and then double click on the other, and that will actually select a contiguous edge or a contiguous face. And then do the same thing, hold down the shift key and continue doing that. Or you can go to the side view, hold down the control and the shift key at the same time and select the rest of them like that. See how marquee selecting? And that's a fast way of doing it as well. Or you can go in here and use your paintbrush and paint. Let's go ahead and make a bigger brush. And let's go to face mode. Hold on the shift key and then paint everything here. That's another way. Okay. Alright, but I choose, for me, I choose to go this route where I do that ring on top, go to the bottom, do this ring on the bottom, and then go to one of the orthographic views, can be front or side, and then hold down the control and shift key and just select the rest of these like that. And that to me is the fastest way to select those polygons. Okay. Now we can select the inside as well, because I can have the inside share the same UV texture space as the outside. If you feel that you need to have a different texture map on the rim, inside rim, you can definitely texture map that separately. But I'm going to go ahead and hold the shift key and do that. Do the inside one on the bottom. Okay, I'm going to select this one. Hold the shift key down though and double click. If you don't hold the shift key down, you may lose all of the selection. Okay. We don't want to select anything else. Okay. And let's go ahead and do create UVs. Hold down the spacebar, go to create UVs, and go to cylindrical mapping. Edit, reset settings, and project. Alright, it gives us a manipulator, this manipulator right here, and that basically tells us that it's wrapping around 180 degrees, which is exactly what we want it to do. We're going to go into the UV texture editor and zoom out a little bit. And you can see these are the UVs that are totally unwrapped. Basically, it's like unfolding a piece of paper. So let's right click over this UV texture space, go to and select UV, and then select all the UVs. And we're actually going to unpack first. So we're going to move these UVs outside of the UV texture space. Okay. So this is the actual outside, and you can notice that we've taken that all out. So this is So we've got this outside the UV texture space. Now let's go back here. Yeah, let's minimize that. Let's right click on this, go back to face mode. Okay, notice I clicked off, anywhere off in the viewport. And now we're going to select all the faces on the top. Okay, so we're going to go to the top and we're going to go select all the faces so I can actually use the paintbrush. And I'm going to hold down the shift key and select all those. Okay, and to save texture space, I am going to select all the ones on the bottom. There we go. Alright, let's click off of that, go into selection mode, and you can hit the Q key or click on just the selection arrow. And I need to select the top of the rim, select one, double click on the other, and go underneath. Zoom in a little bit, shift select one face on the bottom, double click on it. So now we're selecting the top. Okay, go to the bottom, do the same thing. Select one, double click on the other, holding down the shift key. Rotate around. Hold the shift key, select one, and double click on the other one. There we go. So now we've got all the top pieces selected. And again, we're going to share these to texture space, so the top of the rim and the bottom of the rim are going to be the same, which is fine. So I am going to do I'm holding down the spacebar and clicking on Create UVs, and now we're going to go do a planar map. So select planar mapping and click on the option box. Okay, and with this selected, we need to find the axes. So we're in the Y axis. Let's select Y, which is already selected. Best thing to do is reset settings first, and then click on the Y axis, and then project. Now notice that the manipulator shows up in between. It's because it's trying to do the bottom and the top at the same time, which is fine. Because normally you will not see the bottom and the top at the same time, so we can share the same UV space, which is nice. Okay, so let's go ahead and open that up. Right click over it, select UV, and then marquee select it. Okay, and then we're going to want to move that up and out like that. Okay, so we only got a couple more things to do since we're unpacking, getting those laid out just nice. So now we need to go in here and select the caps, and what we can do with these is do a Control A to get into channel box. We want to modify and click on Freeze Transformations. Select these. Little trick here. Go to Modified, Freeze Transformations. Notice that cleans it out. So now all we have to do is go in here and move these up so they're a little easier to grab a hold of. Okay? Or you could go in here, select this, and put it in a layer. So you can see we're in a channel box and we've got the layer editor here. We can select the object and click on this guy right here, and that's going to actually put it in a layer for us. So we can actually turn it off if we want to, and then focus on these guys right here. Hit the F key to focus. Alright, so we're going to just select all the faces around the edge here. Hold the shift key, double click. That will select everything around it. Click on Create UVs and do cylindrical mapping. We don't really need to go into the option box anymore. Okay, open up Texture Editor. Right click over, go to UVs, select UVs, and unpack UVs. A lot of times I'll just go in here with my UVs, and I will try to scale them to the thickness of the object. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the R key, And if you see your manipulator is really, really big, then the plus and minus keys, hit the minus keys to get it a little bit smaller, and that way it's a little easier to manage. Just go ahead and scale that down to look like the cap. Okay? So you can see I'm pretty close. Alright, good. So we're just going to move that over. Alright, now we're going to go and select the faces. Now since there's so few faces, I'm just going to select them by hand. And make sure you rotate around so you don't have anything else selected. Go to Create UVs, go to Planar Mapping, and we're going to do Y axes again. And there we go. So right click over it, UVs, and move it. And in no time you'll be doing this very quickly, very efficiently. Won't take you much time. Let's go to the next one. So click on this guy right here. Make sure in object mode, and hit the F key. Go to face mode. Hold down the Shift key, double click, and go to Create UVs, Cylindrical Mapping. Go into accidentally selected that. Open up your UV texture editor, go to UVs, and just unwrap these. This is time consuming and unfortunately has to be done. Okay, scale those up a little bit, or down a little bit. Alright, let's go and get the rest of this done. And planar mapping. Open this up. And let's move those over like that. There we go. So now I'm going to scale those down a little bit, move it over, just like that. Now everything's unpacked. Now notice that I don't see the other objects in here, and that's normal. What we have to do is you have to make sure you turn the layer back on, make it visible, and just to kind of let you know how the layers work is if you have V, that means it's visible, and if you turn it off, it will turn that object off. R and T and R is reference, so you can't select it, but you can see it. And T is template, so you can kind of see a wireframe. So those all kind of come in handy right now. So I'm going to make it visible, and I'm going to select everything. Okay, so I'm going to marquee select everything. I'm going to open up the texture editor, and now you can see all of my objects. Okay. Now we want to pack these shells now, and what's nice is that you can right click over and go to UVs, select one little portion. Now that these are actually selected as shells, you can right click, or you can go to selection and go select shell, and you can see it selects the whole thing. So all you have to do is select one little portion, and because I've done I did the selection, select shell, it'll select the whole thing. Or now I can hit the G key, because it remembers the G key, or the Y key remembers your last operation. Okay? Right, so the G key. Alright, so I'm going to select the shell. I'm going to go to select shell, and I'm going to move this portion in. This is going to be what you want to remember. Whoops, looks like I'm missing something on the bottom, so I'm going to select the bottom. There we go. So we want to fit this whole thing into this space. So you don't want to squish this. You don't want to do this. You want to do it uniformly. When you do this, it's considered non-uniform scaling. So we want to uniform scale that down, and we have to fit it within the UV texture space. It doesn't really matter where you place this. Just make sure you get in there and you place it efficiently and effectively. You can't have it sticking over like this. You have to have it fit within UV space. And you want to use as much UV space as possible. So get in there and start, working with it. Okay, that looks pretty good. The top and the bottom need the second most UV texture space, so I'm going to go ahead and go to selection, select shell, move that over. Select this shell. This is the top and bottom, so that needs a lot of texture space. So I'm going to go in here and scale that uniformly in, just so it fits. You probably want to have a little space, not a lot, just a little space between the two. Okay, there we go. Okay, again, you want to use as much texture space as you can, so zoom in a little bit and make sure they're not overlapping. Overlapping UVs is when you overlap like that, and this UV texture space now will share the same texture space between the two, and you don't want that. You want to have separate UVs, and you want them packed very nicely and very tight in here. Okay. Alright, the next UVs, I'm guessing this is the big cap, so I'm going to select that, move that over, and I'm going to scale that in. Okay. Move it up. Alright. And scale that uniformly again. Uniformly. Using as much texture space as you can. Zoom in. Now the bigger the surface area of the object, the more texture space you need to have. Just rule of thumb. Okay. I'm going to give a little more room between the two. Okay, there we go. Let's select this guy. And move that over here. Okay. Actually, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. There we go. Alright, and then we have this cap, this air vent cap. I'm going to bring this down. And since this is very small space, we're going to go ahead and make that a little bit smaller. Again, we want to use that texture space the best we can. Okay. It's just like doing a puzzle. Let's go select shell, move that up. Okay, something like that. That looks good. Okay, and then we'll select this guy right here, move that down, and scale that down. Okay, there we go. So there's our oil drum, completely UVs are laid out. Okay, the next thing is we're going to go ahead and finish this up. What we're going to need to do is select this as an object, so make sure it's green. We need to select everything, and now we're going to kind of finish this up. And we want to make sure we save this first. Let's save it before we combine it. So save scene as, and this will be, let's call this oil drum underscore UV, and then we'll call it pack. Okay, so we know what it is. We packed it. Let's go ahead and save it. And now we'll go ahead and combine it. So hold down the space bar, or you can go up here to mesh, combine. So I'm going to go to the option box and reset settings, and then apply and close. Okay, so what we need to do now is we need to go ahead and go to edit, delete by type history, modify, freeze transformations, and then modify center pivot. Okay. We need to make sure that it is on the 0, 0 axes on top of the Y plus Y grid. Okay, let's check and make sure that it is selected. Object selection, it turns green. Go back into UV layout. Under UV texture editor, go to polygons, UV snapshot. And since our texture budget is 1024, let's do 1024 by 1024. We want to make sure keep aspect ratios on, anti-aliasing lines are on. Targa image format is Targa, and we need to go into Browse and make sure we are saving it to the Images folder. So we're going to call this something like Oil Drum UV. Okay, it's called Oil Drum UV. Let's save it. And click OK. Go ahead and click off of the texture editor. Alright. And looks like I got a warning, so I'm going to go in here and go into the UV texture editor again. And let's go in here and find out what's wrong. So go to UV snapshot. Go to Browse. I didn't save it. So I'm going to go in here and to Oil Drum. UV. Try that again. And save it. And it's got this thing right here we need to take care of. See that little asterisk? Select the asterisk. I'm using 2012 at home, and I don't think 2013 has this issue or problem. So I'm going to backspace that. And go ahead and click OK. And it looks like it saved it out. And in the next video we'll bring it into Photoshop, and now you just got done unpacking and packing a UV map for an oil drum.